Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwaka Mimo. The presidential election in August is, according to some opinions, including his own, the election that Musalia Mudavadi could win. I say could because it's not clear whether he will run. After declaring his interest in being president, Mr. Mudavadi championed the formation of the opposition National Super Alliance, or NASA. He and the other principals, Raila Odinga of ODM, Kalonzo Musyoka of Wiper, and Moses Wetangula of Ford Kenya are currently trying to work out who should fly their flag. A poll released at the weekend suggested it should be Mr. Odinga. Well, Musalia Mudavadi is today's guest on Cheche. As always, we have our regular panel of Mutedi Njao and Charles Odhiambo, both of Royal Media Services. So good morning and welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us. You're coming into the studio after back-breaking schedule, you know, trying to popularize NASA's message. But tell us, where do you stand now on the issue of a presidential flag bearer?
Well, I think thanks a lot, and I'm happy that NASA is now a reality, let me put it that way. And if I just spend exactly half a minute, you remember when you interviewed me some time back, I kept on saying that we need to have a solid, united opposition. And I'm glad that that is now a reality. Now, what is important for NASA at this stage is that we have to systematically build confidence amongst our members. And I believe that so far we have done well. We have been able to file the coalition document with the Registrar of Political Parties, and that was a very important milestone, because that is really what now formally announced to the Kenyan people and to the world that NASA is now a legal entity. So that is absolutely important. We have in that document also included what you would call the nomination rules and regulations for the NASA coalition. Okay. Coming to the presidency, we have an option of coming to it through consensus, and really my belief is that that is the only option on the table now, that we will have to burn the midnight oil, looking at various options, various configurations.
Consensus between whom? The entire parties, or just the principals?
The principals, and also some core members of the party, for instance the National Coordinating Committee, and if necessary you can broaden it to include a few more wiser men and women from all the political parties, so that we are able to finally identify our flag bearer. And I believe that we have limited time, but we are not in breach of the regulations, because what is important is that we go through the stage of party nominations, which will be starting for most parties in the coalition early April, and then they end by about mid-April. Now, the legal requirement as to when we would have a presidential candidate actually would come after that, between say early May to mid-May. We would then be able to have a candidate who can present his papers formally to the IBC as a presidential candidate. So I am confident that this will be achieved.
This is interesting because you're presenting Kenyans with what it seems will be, when you say it's consensus, we're not quite sure what shape that consensus will take. It sounds as if you're presenting Kenyans with a boardroom selected candidate, and not one whom your party members who subscribe to, you know, either your leadership or ideology have chosen. You're imposing someone on the basis of what could be seen as selfish interests.
No, it's not seen. We're not looking at that because we've filed a coalition, and in the coalition we've clearly stated that NASA shall have one presidential flag bearer. All right. So in our individual parties, we are all interested in the presidency. But the fact still remains that at some stage we will have to bite the bullet as a collective and be able to present one candidate. And I am absolutely confident that this is going to happen.
So this rules out joint nominations?
Joint nominations would not work with the kind of time frame we have if you have to look at it realistically, because the first stage of the possibility of the nominations, where we want a lot of work to be done, is at the core, okay? And the core is our MCAs, our members of parliament, the gubernatorial seats and so forth. So that structure is the one we want to focus on, really, as a party. And I'm emphasizing this because the stronger we are at that level, the stronger it will be, the easier it will be for the NASA presidential candidate.
Does this agreement have room for a dissatisfied person to bolt out?
Well, constitutionally, somebody can move out if they wish, because you cannot create an agreement that says nobody else can move out. But let me put it this way, that what we filed as NASA categorically states that NASA can only cease to exist if 3 members of the coalition decide to exit. So that means, since we have 4 coalition partners now, in the context of ANC, ODM, Wiper, and Ford Kenya. So it would take 3 of these parties to exit to put an end to NASA. So if 2 parties remain, NASA is still in place. Now, at least on the legal front, okay, but the implications politically of anybody moving would have a dent on NASA. But the better side of it is this, that at this point in time, I think anybody moving out will really be seen in the eyes of the Kenyans as having betrayed a very important cause, and a cause that provides the real alternative to the Jubilee government.
You have appointed a committee to do some work in order to choose one of you. What progress have they made?
Well, they have. You see, the committee was not focused on choosing a flag bearer. Let me help in just explaining that.
Yeah.
There are certain aspects that are very critical in the formation of the coalition. The first is what we have seen, the coalition document being signed. Then there are some other details that are required by the register of political parties. For instance, there must be an agreement on aspects of the financing, how resources shall be shared within the coalition. These are very important details that must also be completed. They have more or less set out the nomination guidelines as a committee. Either you can have consensus, you can have joint nominations, or you can have free competition or open competition, depending on the threat, the political threat from the opposing entity. So as far as I'm concerned, these are the critical stages. The idea of who is the flag bearer may be the elephant in the room, but there are a lot of other issues that the National Coordinating Committee had to deal with. Then we shall come to the element of the flag bearer. They will provide some guidelines. They will provide some maybe basis that can be used to help in arriving at the consensus. So that is what they're working on now.
So let's be clear then. Your preferred method, whether you and your co-principals, is the consensus method, and the technical committee is working to streamline the process.
Yes, they have to work out some parameters. They have to work out some maybe weighting mechanism and so forth, and then say, look, if you work within this kind of framework, you are likely to narrow in on your president's.
I've seen a report in today's paper suggesting that some of the committee members, some people are suggesting that group, that since Raila and Kalonzo took part in 2013, and they won, and they went to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court rejected the winning. Therefore, since they won that time, why not then give it the time to repeat the same again and win again? And then the two of them.
Well, you see, that is an opinion. It's an opinion from a segment of the NASA fraternity. But let's face it, circumstances have changed. The country has gone 4 years after that election. And it is important that in arriving at the decision, even assuming it's the same decision, or it's another configuration, we must take into account, and everybody must have an open mind to take into account that there are certain changes that are real to the situation now.
Such as?
As we move in now? Well, let me put it this way. For instance, if you are to talk about the country and the sentiments that are being expressed in the country, you are now talking of a situation where the country has now been exposed to an Uhuru Ruto leadership. There are certain dynamics that are there. We are also seeing a situation where some of the players that may have been the supporters of that particular combination at that time also shifting. Some shifting towards Jubilee and others maybe opting out.
But that's hardly any different from previous election cycles.
But these are dynamics. You asked me what kind of dynamics.
Yes.
Now the dynamics must take into account what changes and what kind of shape is taking place in different parts of the country.
In that
and for instance, the other side of it is that the reality is that NASA is a new body. I'm also a new player within
NASA
that context.
is a new body with old faces. It's a different name.
No, it's a new body with
old faces
and new faces.
No. You've contested the presidency before. Raila Odinga has contested the presidency before. Kalonzo Musyoka has been a running mate. You've been a running mate. You've been a deputy president. Kalonzo Musyoka has been a deputy president. Raila Odinga has been a prime minister. Moses Wetangula has been, a minister in several capacities. Your old faces with a new name.
I think what we must look at is that we are Kenyans and we have a right to contest and we have a right
So that's different from telling us that NASA is new. So
no,
let's be very clear.
But it is a new formation. Let us face it.
The arrangement is new, but the faces are the same.
Is it the faces we are after or the philosophy behind the NASA?
So what is this one philosophy that
the
brings
one
together
philosophy,
the ideologies of all these parties?
The one philosophy is that we want to have better governance in the country. This is really the issue around the National Super Alliance. All right? And that is what we are driving. I don't want us to spend too much time, all the time, on the faces. NASA is also bringing in a lot of new players in other ranks.
But not at the top.
No, but it's not all.
The way our political system works is that it's, top-driven.
Well, NASA is different.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
NASA is different.
Prove that to us.
NASA is more of a people-driven movement. NASA wants to have more inclusivity.
Isn't it ironical if you say NASA is a people-driven movement and yet to choose the flag bearer, you are proposing that a few people lock themselves somewhere and decide one of them? Why can't you let the people move this?
Look, are you sure that it's not the people who are approaching us and advising us that they would like us to follow this path?
You tell me.
That is what is happening. There's a lot of consultations taking place behind the scenes, and I want to tell you that NASA has got its approach, and its approach is working, and it is generating sufficient interest in our country and amongst our ranks. And I can tell you that there is a difference in NASA, and we want to make it a more broad-based alliance That is our target.
Let me come to the panelists to ask. Mr. Mudavadi here tells us that NASA is new. You both have significant experience in covering the political landscape of Kenya. Do you see anything new? Do you see that there'll be a new presidential flag bearer, someone who is new to the country?
As far as I'm concerned, I see an element of newness. One, in the name itself, the formation is new, we must agree. And two, the working relationships are also new. I know Musalia Mudavadi contested for the presidency before he's been in government and all the rest, but we have not seen a working relationship. The last time Kalonzo was on one side, Musalia, remember, was with Uhuru Kenyatta, that's 2002. And so we have not had this kind of formation before. The faces are the same. I don't know, I'm yet to really understand why he feels we should not look at the faces, go beyond the faces. The formation is new in the name and everything. The arrangement between the partners is new, but the faces is the same.
Had some consulting for you next interview when we ask you what's fresh about NASA. Mutegi?
I disagree. I think I agree with what you feel, that it's just a name. Last night I saw Kalonzo Musyoka with a group chatting to and others, saying the selection, when it comes to selection, option number 1, Kalonzo Musyoka; option number 2, Kalonzo Musyoka; option number 3, Kalonzo Musyoka. So what's new? They are not willing to have anybody else except them. So, and again, the argument in today's paper, they're saying that since Kalonzo and Raila ran and won, now they have a bigger advantage because they have added Musalia Mudavadi, they have added Wetangula. So the NASA now will be stronger with them being the flag bearer. And I think that's what I would like him to talk about.
So it's a newer formation.
It's a newer formation, but they have more advantage. Last 2013, they didn't have them, the two.
So well, let me put it this way. Kalonzo and his comments may have been comments for him to up his stakes in the context of
the boardroom consensus,
the consensus building that is taking place. And we all have diehard supporters in our backyard, and the ones who believe if it is not Musalia, then they feel they have not obtained the best result, and so forth, and it will go for all the candidates. But what I'm trying to say here is that what we are looking for is something that is bigger, and this is the unity of NASA, the unity of the National Super Alliance, so that we move away and break away from what somebody may believe is just a personality cult. We want the unity of NASA on a broader basis to be the more fundamental glue that is holding us, and the desire and the wish to make sure that Kenya gets better leadership.
If there is unity, once you say it's not Kalonzo, there will be apathy in those areas. Once they say it's not Musalia, a lot of apathy. Once you say it's not Raila, apathy. No,
so, gentlemen and lady, I think here we're missing the point.
Yes.
Even if we go a little bit back to the NAC coalition and NAC framework, there were a lot of luminaries that were there, whether it was from Kibaki himself to Wamalwa to Raila and so forth. At the end of the day, even Nyachai and so, at the end of the day, if you will recollect, there's usually the initial reaction to a decision, but after a few days, people then wake up to the reality and refocus on the bigger cause. And the NAC cause, for instance, at that time, was to make sure that they were unseating the Kanu regime. And they coalesced and they went forward, all right? So as far as I'm concerned, some of those reactions will definitely abound in NASA when the flag bearer has been named. But thereafter, it will be important because people must then keep their eye on the ball. And here the target is to replace the Jubilee government. But
if we look at your own history, since you've gone into history, you walked out of ODM, citing the lack of a political playing field. We know that in 2007, Kalonzo walked out of ODM as well. So when you talk about unity and keeping eyes on the ball, how can Kenyans trust that there won't be a similar sort of fallout because people are disappointed by not getting what they wanted?
Let me ask you this. In Kenya, there have been people, the politicians, Kenyans have had disagreements, and they have reunited under different circumstances. All right, this has happened before. It's not rocket science, and you can give examples, as you say. Kalonzo, when we had ODM Kenya, decided to contest. I decided to contest the other 2013. But does it also occur to you that Kibaki contested earlier, Raila contested earlier, Michael Omala contested earlier, but then they came together in NAC?
So there is a possibility that Musalia Mudavadi could go back and work together with Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto? Not
in that direction. I'm talking about NASA. I'm not talking about Jubilee. Our target as far as Jubilee is concerned is to get them out. And we have repeated that that is our objective.
And so you're assuring Kenyans, therefore, Kenyans who want an alternative to the Jubilee government, that there will be no fallout from NASA. The 4 principles we have at the moment will be the 4 principles who go into the August election, and will be the 4 principles who we see after.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The National Super Alliance is firm. It is solid. And I can tell you very, very clearly that if anybody attempts to move out of NASA, I think that person will suffer as an individual, because the supporters in whatever constituency will not be walking away with him. So this is why I've been saying that this is a citizens' movement. Okay? It's a people's movement.
Somebody sitting out there,
and it's not about just the individuals. The individuals may symbolize the aspirations of a particular constituency in that context, but they are not the custodians of the aspirations of those people. So if you imagine that it is you and you alone, and therefore if you walk away, everybody goes with you, then you've missed the point.
Somebody is sitting out there and maybe wondering, so the ball here for NASA is to remove the Jubilee government. Then what?
Then provide better leadership. That's
and it is as good as it's done. We have seen your leadership. We have seen Raila's leadership. We have seen Kalonzo's leadership, Wetangula's leadership. And this is a thing the Jubilee people keep harping.
Come on, let them be serious. Let the Jubilee guys be serious here. Who amongst us has been a president?
There's been a vice president.
No.
Two vice presidents and a co-principal.
Under what constitutional arrangements? Yeah, I mean, we have to be realistic in the comparisons that we are making here.
Yeah.
And in fact, I find that argument very naive when somebody tries to say that if you put the years of these leaders cumulatively, then they have been in government longer than
anybody else.
That is really a naive and an unfortunate argument. In fact, it defeats logic. It's not a logical debate at all.
How would you counter it then? What argument would you present?
The position that you must look at is this. First of all, the constitutional arrangement that we have today is different. So this reality must be taken into account when we are now looking at public leadership and how things are done. Secondly, let us face it, these if you are to apportion blame and what have you, I mean, what would you say? I mean, Kenyatta's father was a president for 15 years. Then Moi was a president for 24 years. And then Kibaki was a president for how many years? 15 years.
10 years.
No,
10 years. And then now, sorry about that. And then now we have Uhuru, who has been there for 4 years. So are you? What do you do? Do you just take those years cumulatively and then
So the management of the country will be as good as the person at the helm.
Precisely, and not just the person at the helm only, but the team that he's working with. All right?
But that's the argument they're saying. But we have been there.
You have been part of the team that was leading.
Yeah, that's
fine. So let's come to you being at the helm and the team that would assist you after the break. We've got to pause now. This is Cheche, and we're live on Citizen TV. What do you think of NASA Principal Musalia Mudavadi's prospects for 2017? Would you vote for him? Tell us on SMS number 22422 or on Twitter using the hashtag Cheche.